RESPECT. Find out what it means to me.
Let's get into that.
Hey everybody, I'm Nate Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And you are tuned in to Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design channel. Marriage Monday is a show that we do where we look at all things marriage. What's the Bible say about God's design for marriage? How can we better reflect that in our own marriages? As well as dealing with topics that deal with marriage. Which leads us to this month's marriage-related topic, which is...
love and respect. So Dr. Emerson Eggerichs wrote a book called Love and Respect, and it's a great book that we've read a few times, and they also have a group Bible study that we've done a couple times. So you'd think we'd have it figured out by now, but we don't.
No.
But it's a great resource for marriage, and it all comes from the idea of love and respect all comes from Ephesians 5:33, which says, "Nevertheless, each individual among you is also to love his own wife, even as himself, and the wife must see to it that she respects her husband." So it talks about husbands need to love their wives, but then it says, wives, respect your husbands. And it doesn't say everybody love each other and all is good. So there's this concept of the importance of love and respect in a marriage and how that looks. So that's what we're talking about this month. The first week we started on the crazy cycle, which is without love, she reacts. Without respect, he reacts. So that's the cycle, the crazy cycle that we got on. Then last week we talked about love. So I was answering a few questions as far as what it looks like to be loved and what that means in our marriage, and how my pinkness is the way Dr. Eggerichs says it, but the way I interpret things as a woman affects kind of things that are said and heard in our marriage. So this week we're talking about respect and what that means to a guy in a marriage, and how men need that. They need the respect part for marriage. So tell me a little bit about this concept of, I just said kind of a little bit about the pinkness. So last week we talked about women have pink headphones and a pink megaphone, and that means we hear things and speak things differently than a man hears and speaks them. Sure. Not all the time, but there can be some wonky ways that, hey, I said something, but why do you think that that's what I said? That's not what I said. Yep. It can get messed up a little bit in the transmission. So tell me about the blue megaphone, blue headphones, and what that means exactly in a man's life.
Sure. So guys, I think, are kind of some odd animals. But before I even expound on really how I think what my blue headphones and blue megaphone will look like in a relationship, one thing we talked about last week that we'll continue to talk about is Dr. Eggerichs says routinely throughout the book, these differences between men and women, between husbands and wives, are not wrong. They're just different. Mm-hmm. And I hope you've started working that into your vocabulary, because it'd be amazing the amount of times it applies, right? Where something happens and you go, I really don't like that. But why? And then you start to think about it and you go, okay, well, I still don't like it, but it's probably not wrong.
Right.
It's just different. And, we live now in a world where to talk about a difference between a man and a woman is like, whoa, right? I mean, we can't be pointing to differences because somehow we've equated different with unequal. Mm-hmm. And they're not, right? Men and women are created 100% equal in value before the Lord. But the Lord did design women uniquely qualified to do things I can't do, right, as well as you women can do them. And in the same way, there are things I can do that I'm better qualified to do. Not wrong, just different.
Right. It's a equal in value, but different in function.
That's right. That's right. And that ties right into what we're talking about with love and respect. And for us as people to delude ourselves into minimizing the differences, to me, that's really what robs men and women of their value, is to say, nope, you're all the same. No differences. Everybody's exactly the same. Right? One, denies reality, and two, it steals the value of the way God created women and the way God created men.
And you're missing the beauty too. The part of the beauty of creation is that people are so different.
That's right.
Their opinions are different. The way they think is different. Their skin tones, their hair color, it's different. And that's the beauty of creation, is that we're not all the same.
Shows us that creativity of the Lord.
Yeah.
Right? And it gives real credence to that creative side of our God, and it's a beautiful thing. So, but what that means is that it can play out with people clashing against each other, right? And certainly, unfortunately, we see that playing out right before our eyes with regards to people that cannot seem to wrap their heads around the difference between black and white, and the value of black people and white people, and that equality before the Lord, and the beauty of you regardless of your race. But it also plays out in the marriage, right? I mean, you look at things differently than I look at them. And it's easy for me to go, that way you look at things is dumb. And it's not okay, and you need to stop. Right? And if you take that attitude of, I'm going to change the way my wife thinks about something, you're really damning yourself to a marriage filled with spending time spinning around the crazy cycle. Because the Lord didn't make her to think like you. And you can't argue her into thinking like you. You might be able to emotionally pummel her into pretending like she thinks like you, but eventually that's going to get exhausting enough that that's going to snap back against you with bitterness and all the rest. So for me, as I think about the blue headphones and the blue megaphone, I feel like guys, oftentimes, the way we relate to one another can become very sort of caste system, right? Where it's like we're all sort of competing against each other, and it can easily become a very one-upsmanship sort of relationship, and I have heard that this is mainly an American thing. This next part, I don't know if that's true or not. If you're from outside the United States and you're watching this, you can let me know. But guys, at least here in the U.S., are fluent in the language of sarcasm and sort of the one-upsmanship of wit, right? And we can go to great lengths to sort of be the guy with the next witty response, and then make sure that I've got a witty response to that witty response. And I've got guy friends, close guy friends, that we can have entire conversations where it's just us sort of outwitting each other.
Right.
And for us as guys, we can find a lot of pleasure in that, because as you're engaging in this banter of wits, right, it's sort of this underlying tone of, I respect you enough to continue on in this conversation, in this fun little game that we're playing, and we're laughing back and forth, and it builds me up, because I feel like, I got these guys that we go have these back and forths with. And certainly, I'm sure, because you've overheard many of these types of things, I'm sure you and probably lots of other wives are listening and go, I listen to that and I think, you didn't talk about a single thing that was worth anything.
Right.
And that's not new, right? I mean, we probably have all been in that situation where I got together with a buddy, and let's say that buddy just had a baby. Okay, and he and I get together first time since he's had this baby, and we're going to play a game, or we're going to hang out or whatever, and we talk back and forth, and I spend 5 hours with this guy. And I come home, and Andrea asks, well, how did it go? Well, it went really well. We had fun. We played this game. we talked. His wife's doing great. Baby's doing great. It was fun to get to see the little baby and hang out, and we had a blast. And he was like, "Oh, that's great. Well, what time was the baby born?" I don't know. Well, what was it, a long labor? I don't know.
Or how's the transition with the new baby and the other child? And
yeah, I'm like, I don't know any of that. And she keeps asking questions like, well, I won the game. Is that helpful? It's different, right? When guys get together and we relate to each other, it's not always as detail oriented as it might be with if you had been there involved in the situation. So that ties over into marriage as well, where I'm not, my headphones and my megaphone are not as easily in the details as you are. And while certainly I'm sure there are guys that are excellent with details, I find that to be a common thing with our blueness, that we kind of easily go to being dreamers and being long-term thinkers and visionaries, and we have these grandiose ideas, and that's just sort of that's the blueness that wells up inside of me, is sort of this kind of long-term, strategic, sort of competition driven, right, drive to dominate. If you listen to Testosterone Tuesday last month, that kind of drive.
So we were saying the uniqueness between the two, between men and women, is a great thing, but how do you see that blueness of yours, or your creation, the way you're created as a man? How does that interfere with your marriage? How does that cause issues? Even though it's a great thing that we're created different, do you see that kind of causing some problems?
Yeah. So one thing is, it's easy for me to get sort of in my own thoughts and not taking into account your pinkness, right? So, I get involved in kind of doing things the way I'm doing them, and I got all these things going on, and I don't think to share with you the things that I'm thinking and the things that are going on inside of my head. And then by the time I do, it's an advanced thought, and you're going, well, you're like running to try and catch up, if that makes sense. I think there are some little things, because of the drive and how easy it is for guys in particular, I think, to become self-focused, including me for sure. There are little annoyances that I know can get in the way of our marriage. And I can give a perfect example of this. Regularly, I'll be sitting at my desk, right? I've had lunch. It's coming up on 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon, so it's been a couple hours since lunch, and I'm starting to maybe kick around dinner time, right? And Andrew knows where this is going. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, man, what sounds amazing right now? Tacos. Tacos for dinner would be amazing. And so I'll just shoot a quick text message to Andrew and say, what would be amazing for dinner tonight in 2.5 hours? Tacos. Right? And I don't even think, I just think like, oh man, you always are asking me, like, what would you like for dinner? Well,
I don't mean 2.5 hours before dinner. Right,
of course, you're asking as you're putting your grocery list together 3 days earlier. But I think of it and I'm like, oh, tacos sounds great. And you have been amazing at, not every time, but routinely, when I say that, you'll be like, okay, we'll have tacos. And I'm sure there's like chicken thawing on the counter for whatever dinner you had planned for that night. And so I need to be better about that. But I think that's one way that that I can become kind of internally focused as I'm thinking through my blue. I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking about the man, I'm in this job and I'm trying to be the best sales guy that I can be. I'm trying to grow this business for the benefit of our family. And pretty soon it's just all about me, right? And you and the kids are just sort of along for the ride. And I do think that that's maybe not necessarily the headphones and the megaphone, but that's a way that the blueness, my struggles as a guy can play out to hurt our family. The other thing is definitely, guys, sarcasm and wit does not play as well with our wives as it plays with our guy friends. And I've had some really heated conversations in circles of guys where I've told them, guys, we should just have a zero sarcasm policy when it comes to our wives with regards to sarcasm directed at them. Because sarcasm, really, if you think about it, it's like stabbing someone with a knife through a pillow, right? I mean, you're jabbing them, right? And there's some element of truth usually in the jab, because otherwise it wouldn't be sarcasm. But you're surrounding it in this like jokey, ha-ha sort of thing. And with our guy friends, that works out pretty well because there's this underlying established respect between the two of us as guys. Because I do think guys establish respect faster than women establish love relationships, right? I mean, I can meet a guy for like 10 minutes and maybe we'll connect on a couple specific things, and it's like, dude, you love board games? I love board games. And in that moment, my respect meter goes ding, right? And then we were best friends, right? The whole process took like 35 seconds, right? And then he and I can joke back and forth sarcastically, and we're like, nah, but we have that underlying respect. That doesn't work that way with our wives. It's really damaging if we don't keep the sarcasm in check with regards to our wives, and I don't always.
And I can feel really unloving. Yeah,
feels really unloving, and that definitely has been something that I've done that has started us down a crazy cycle path in our marriage.
So that's one way. But what are some other ways that you have grown in understanding of my pinkness, or my need for love?
Guys, we got to get comfortable with the concept of sitting quietly listening. Because for you, one thing that I've found is if my idea of a deep conversation is I'm going to ask, hey, tell me how you feel about this situation, and 35 seconds later the conversation is going to be over and we're going to be moving on, then I have a very poor understanding of how you work. Because for us, we'll sit and have a conversation, and I might ask you a question and you might give some thoughts sort of maybe off the top of your head as you think about that. But I really need to be committed to probing into you and giving you an opportunity to think, how do I feel about that? And for years in our marriage, I wanted the quick answer, right? I wanted to know you. I wanted to be a student of you on my timetable. And as I've grown in our relationship and in my, just maturity as a human being, I've come to a much better understanding that you are willing to be known, but it's not going to be on my timetable. And that I need to be okay with that. And I need to be a student of you, but a persistent student of you. And I feel like as I've gotten more comfortable with that, I've realized it's easier to get to know you, that way. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Do you feel like that is a thing?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it can take a while to really bring out the deeper levels.
Yeah, I think, and again, this is a generalization. Right? A lot of these things are generalizations, but I think maybe for guys, while we may not like to talk about our feelings maybe as much as women do, I feel like guys are better at boiling down how they feel about something quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Versus, we've talked to you and several women we've talked to that are like, when somebody asks me how I feel about something, it might take me like a matter of days to figure out how do I feel about that, right? And to internalize that. Is that?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, sure. So don't give up, right? Never give up.
Yes.
On pursuing your wife.
What are some ways that I can really minister to you to build up your respect tank? What are some ways that you feel really respected by? Yeah, so
for me, probably the biggest way is knowing that you're my biggest fan. That's something that you've grown in a ton over the last 3 or 4 years, where just out of the blue, you'll send me a text message that just says, man, you're such an amazing salesperson. Like, it just is amazing to me the things you've accomplished this year in your company. Or you might just say, hey, it's just so amazing to me what a great dad you are. Or, something where it's unexpected. And for me, it's like, man, knowing that Andrea is my biggest fan just really makes me feel like, I can take on the world, right? Because Andrea's got my back and she believes in me. And man, I feel like for men in general, having someone believe in you is critical. And you know what? Maybe there's some areas in your marriage where you're like, yeah, the problem is I don't believe in him because he always has these giant, grandiose dreams, and then he doesn't follow through on them, and or it gets us in a mess financially or whatever. But I would challenge you, but then find something that you can be a fan of him in, right? Find things of his that you can specifically say, man, I just love when you whatever. Because guys, for us to know somebody believes in us, it gives us that motivation to go the extra mile in the thing that we're doing, right? When I know Andrea is so impressed with the way I am with our kids, it pushes me to want to be a better father to our kids, because I know, like, man, Andrea believes in me and I don't want to let her down, right? Which is great. Here's another thing. Allowing us to be dreamers as men and walking in those dreams with us is a huge blessing in a life. And even if those dreams, right? If your husband comes home from his, fancy corporate America job and he goes, man, I was sitting in my office today, babe, and I was just thinking, it'd be amazing if we just moved up to Idaho and we're just potato farmers. Like, that would just be, wouldn't that be like amazing to just live our lives on the farm and we're growing something with our own hands? And you're probably already at the point where you're like, no, that does not sound amazing.
Have you thought about all these ways that
you
this
don't
would be
even
a
know
terrible idea?
Right, you don't know the first thing about real estate. You probably couldn't even point to Idaho on a map, right? You've named, like, in your mind, 30 things that could never happen that would blow this dream up. Really try to resist being the dream crusher and be the dream believer, right? As a guy, I can say, of the things that I've dreamt up in my life, very few of them ever move past the dream phase, right? But having someone that walks, if I've got a dream for, like, man, this would be kind of fun, don't you think? And for Andrew to be like, well, what would that look like? What would you do if you did that? Not pointing out flaws, but just asking more questions about it. Man, it's like, oh man, she she's thinking of herself as a potato farmer right now, right? And of course, most guys get to the place where they're like, oh yeah, that would be that'd be really cool, but we're not gonna do that, right? But having someone believe in me that's so important. And then the last thing for me for respect is being available, and specifically, I mean being physically available and emotionally available are huge signs of respect. And I know you've shared with the channel some of the struggles you've gone through in your past with regards to people that have wronged you sexually and physically. And so I know that that's not an easy thing for you to do. But when you choose to pursue me sexually, to pursue me at an emotionally intimate level, man, it just totally fills me up, because I feel like you have brought me into your inner circle, right? I have a position of real value in your life, right? Not just your husband or this guy you kind of do life with, but in this most intimate part of you, I'm in the inner circle. And it just, for me, and for a lot of guys to know that, like, hey, yeah, you've met my wife, but you don't know her like I know her, right? And it's easy to joke about that, but for guys, that was a big deal, right? I mean, I know you in ways that other people don't know you, and I don't just mean sexually. I mean just intimately, emotionally, spiritually, intimately, and man, that fires me up as a guy, right? It makes me feel super respected.
Yeah. So, other than saying the opposite of all those things, are there things that you can think of that totally take away from your love tank? That are very, disrespectful and are such takers.
Having when we get in control struggles, that I think that's probably the biggest one, other than the opposite of those other ones. For me, it's super deflating for me to feel like I'm in a power struggle in my own home, right? And so like undermining each other with regards to the kids, not kind of putting our stuff out there for people to see, like not trying to be careful about, hey, if we're gonna have an argument, let's not do it in front of the kids. Let's try and, not that they shouldn't see some conflict, they should, but if it's going to be something that's going to be a heated discussion, then to move that off somewhere. Any of those kinds of just power struggles, I guess, within the home or within the marriage, that's really deflating for me.
Yeah, and those can happen sometimes.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Anything else you want to add as far as respect and anything to do with that topic?
No, I mean, I would just say, guys, if you feel disrespected by your wives, love them enough to tell them that, right? In a kind way, to be able to sit down and say, you know what, I have felt the last 2 weeks. I've always felt, if that's the case, but don't use hyperbole, right? Be honest. I've felt like you're just really disrespecting me in this area. And use that word, right? Because sometimes I think, guys, we use other words when what we really mean is disrespected. So to be able to say, I really feel disrespected, babe, in this area. Or I really feel disrespected when you do this. And love her enough to be vulnerable. And give her the opportunity to fix that, rather than assuming, I'm not going to say anything because she won't fix it anyway. Right. That isn't right. And
then her response is her responsibility.
Exactly.
So
exactly right.
Then you can give it over to the Lord, but at least you've done your part. Yeah.
That's right. And you know what? She may respond with, oh yeah? Well, let me tell you some things you're doing that are unloving to me or disrespectful to me. You know what? Then humbly listen to her and say, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me try and work on those things. And genuinely then try and work on those things. As you lead by example, you're being the more mature one that's jumping off the crazy cycle, right? It will be difficult in the moment, but by being the one that jumps off, you've led the way for her to be able to go, you know what? I want to be that way too in our marriage.
So wives, I am going to give you a big challenge here. Go to your husband when you have some time alone, and ask him, how can I be more respectful towards you?
Mm.
And listen and take those to heart. How can I respect you better?
Mm.
And just really be willing to listen and not defend his answers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I would even say, for guys and girls, one step further would be sit down and say, what's one thing I've done this week that made you feel loved or made you feel respected? And what's one thing I did this week that made you feel unloved or disrespected?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so what we've got coming up this week is Testosterone Tuesday, Women Power Wednesday, Thirsty Thursday, and then Family Friday. And then we'll do the diary on Saturday. And I don't know, anything else you want to add?
No, it's great. We've got special guests this week for Family Friday, because we will be talking about the teenage years, and we ain't got one of those yet. So we will be having some guests in for that. Please don't miss that. Love to have you join us for that and all the rest of the shows this week.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until then, guys, remember, God is for your marriage.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.